The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with the usual mix of tension and arrogance as representatives from dozens of species gathered around the massive holographic display. Admiral Zex Thera of the Corvani Empire leaned back in his floating chair, his forearms crossed in what humans would recognize as smugness. His scaled reptilian face showed clear disdain as he watched the primitive blue planet rotating slowly in the center of the room. "You're telling us that these humans refuse to surrender?" General Vokhtar, the insectoid commander of the Hive Collective, clicked his mandibles in what passed for laughter among his kind. "They've seen our fleet demonstrations on their outer colonies. They know what we're capable of." Ambassador Sylvan of the Crystalline Ethereal Confederation pulsed with soft blue light, indicating amusement. "Perhaps they don't understand the concept of overwhelming technological superiority. Their most advanced weapons are laughably primitive compared to our plasma cannons and molecular disruptors." The hologram zoomed in to show Earth's military installations. Rows of metal vehicles sat in neat formations across various continents. The alien commanders studied them with growing entertainment. "Are those their main battle units?" Admiral Zexathara pointed at the display showing several M1 Abrams tanks conducting training exercises in a desert somewhere in the American Southwest. "They're using chemical propulsion and kinetic projectiles. How delightfully ancient." The room erupted in various forms of alien laughter. Some species chittered, others pulsed with different colored lights, and a few made sounds that resembled grinding metal. To them, humanity's military might look like children playing with toys. General Vokhtar's compound eyes focused on the tank specifications that scrolled beside the hologram. 68 tons of metal armor. Our handheld weapons can slice through titanium like paper. Their projectiles move at barely 3,000 meters per second when our energy weapons travel at light speed. This isn't even worth calling a battle. The intelligence reports indicate they call this particular model the M1 Abrams, noted Commander Thys, a tall, thin humanoid with pale skin and oversized black eyes. "Named after some ancient military leader of theirs. They seem quite proud of these relics." Ambassador Sylvan's crystalline form shimmered with what appeared to be condescension. "I've studied their history. They've been using similar designs for over a century. No innovation. No advancement beyond adding slightly better electronics. Meanwhile, we've mastered gravity manipulation, energy shielding, and matter conversion." Admiral Zexathera stood and activated his personal holographic interface. "Show me their production capabilities for these tanks." The display shifted to show manufacturing facilities across Earth. Humans in coveralls worked alongside robotic arms, assembling the massive vehicles piece by piece. The process looked painfully slow compared to the alien shipyards that could construct entire fleets using automated matter replication. "They're building them one at a time," General Vokhtar observed, his voice dripping with mockery. "Our fabricators could produce 1,000 hover tanks in the time it takes them to complete one of those primitive boxes." "And look at the complexity," Commander Thys added, manipulating the hologram to show a cutaway view of an M1's interior. Mechanical controls, human operators, chemical fuel systems. They haven't even discovered basic neural interfacing or thought command systems. The alien commanders continued their analysis, growing more confident with each detail they uncovered. The humans' tanks required massive supply chains for fuel and ammunition. They needed extensive maintenance. They were vulnerable to environmental conditions. By contrast, the aliens' war machines were self-sustaining, powered by zero-point energy, and could operate in any environment from the vacuum of space to the crushing depths of gas giants. "I almost feel sorry for them," Ambassador Sylvan mused, her light dimming to a soft amber that indicated pity among her people. "They're trying to fight the future with museum pieces." Admiral Zexathara called up tactical projections showing various invasion scenarios. In every simulation, the alien forces achieved complete victory within hours. Their energy shields deflected all human weapons, while their plasma cannons turned entire tank battalions into molten slag. "The humans do have numerical superiority in some regions," noted General Vokhtar, studying troop concentration reports. "These Americans alone have several thousand of these Abrams tanks." "Quantity over quality," Commander Thys replied dismissively. "A classic mistake of primitive civilizations. They haven't learned that a single advanced unit can defeat hundreds of obsolete ones." The discussion continued as the aliens reviewed intelligence about human tactics, training, and deployment strategies. Everything they saw reinforced their belief that the coming conquest would be easier than expected. The humans fought in predictable patterns, relied on outdated communication systems, and showed no understanding of three-dimensional battlefield dynamics. Their tank crews actually sit inside the vehicles, General Vokhtar pointed out, genuinely amazed. When the armor is breached, they die with their machines. Such inefficiency. Whereas our pilots operate remotely from command ships, Admiral Zexathera agreed. When one of our units is destroyed, we simply transfer consciousness to a new body and continue fighting. These humans have no such capability. As the meeting progressed, the alien commanders grew increasingly casual about their invasion plans. What had started as a military briefing became more like a casual discussion about an upcoming recreational activity. The conquest of Earth was beginning to seem less like a war and more like a cleanup operation. "I propose we begin with their major population centers," suggested Ambassador Sylvan. "Once we demonstrate the futility of resistance, the rest should surrender quickly." "Agreed," Admiral Zexathera nodded. "We'll send a single battle group initially. No need to commit our full fleet against such primitive opposition." The holographic display showed the proposed battle group: 50 advanced warships with energy shielding, gravity weapons, and self-repairing armor. Each ship could theoretically level an entire human city. Against this force, the humans would field their chemical-powered tanks and kinetic weapons. As the meeting concluded, the alien commanders felt a mixture of professional confidence and mild disappointment. They had hoped for a more challenging opponent, something that would test their advanced military systems and provide valuable combat experience for their troops. Instead, they were facing what appeared to be a civilization that had barely progressed beyond throwing rocks, albeit very fast, very heavy rocks. The M1 Abrams tanks that humans seemed so proud of looked like antiques in a museum, curiosities from a bygone era when warfare was crude and wasteful. None of the alien commanders could imagine that these primitive, human machines might possess any advantages that their advanced technology lacked. The coming battle, they assumed, would be over before it truly began. Staff Sergeant Maria Rodriguez crouched inside her M1A2 Abrams, listening to the communications chatter filling her headset. 3 months had passed since the alien fleet had appeared in Earth's skies, and the initial shock had given way to grim determination. The massive ships hung like dark clouds over major cities, their hulls shimmering with some kind of energy field that deflected every missile humanity had thrown at them. "Bulldog 6? This is command," the radio crackled. "Enemy ground forces are moving into your sector. Intelligence reports they're using some kind of hover vehicles. Approximately 50 units advancing from the northeast." Rodriguez adjusted her position in the commander's seat, her experienced eyes scanning the multiple displays showing her tank's status. Beside her, Private Jackson operated the main gun controls while Sergeant Torres handled the driving. Specialist Kim monitored the advanced targeting systems that had been hastily upgraded with the latest human technology. "Roger, Command. Bulldog 6 is ready," Rodriguez replied, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. This would be humanity's first real ground engagement with the alien forces. Through the periscope, she could see the desert landscape stretching out before them. Her tank was positioned hull down behind a ridge with only the turret exposed. Around her, she knew dozens of other M1 Abrams were waiting in similar positions. The humans had learned from their ancestors' mistakes in past wars. They wouldn't charge blindly into superior firepower. "Contact front," called out Kim from his position at the thermal imaging system. "Range 4,000 meters in closing. Count 47 vehicles moving in formation." Rodriguez raised her own periscope and felt her heart skip a beat. The alien vehicles were like nothing in any military manual. They floated 2 meters off the ground, their sleek hulls gleaming with an otherworldly blue-silver finish. No wheels, no tracks, no visible propulsion system. They moved with an eerie silence that seemed to absorb sound rather than create it. "Jesus," whispered Jackson. "Look at the size of those things." The alien hover tanks were massive, easily twice the size of an Abrams. Their turrets moved with fluid precision, tracking targets that the humans couldn't even see yet. Energy began building around their main guns, creating an ominous purple glow. "All Bulldog units, this is 6, Rodriguez transmitted to her platoon. "Remember your training. Wait for optimal range. These things might be fancy, but they still need to obey the laws of physics." The alien commander, General Vokhtar himself, observed the battlefield from his command vehicle. His compound eyes easily spotted the human positions despite their attempts at concealment. To him, the primitive tanks looked pathetic, hiding behind dirt mounds like frightened animals. "Initiate primary bombardment," he ordered through his neural interface. "Demonstrate our superiority." Purple beams of concentrated plasma erupted from the alien weapons, striking the ridge where the human tanks were positioned. The energy weapons vaporized rock and sand, creating glass craters where they hit. Several shots struck close to human positions, but the carefully chosen terrain absorbed most of the impact. "Missed us," Torres reported from the driver's position, his voice tight with controlled fear. "They're not used to fighting hull-down positions," Rodriguez observed. The aliens were firing at where they thought the tanks should be, not where they actually were. "Kim, can you get a lock on the lead vehicle?" "Working on it, Sergeant," Kim replied, his fingers dancing over the targeting computer. The alien vehicle's energy signatures were playing havoc with the thermal systems, but the laser rangefinder was still functional. "Got it, range 3,800 meters. Jackson, load sabot," Rodriguez ordered. "Sabot up," Jackson confirmed, sliding the armor-piercing round into the main gun's chamber. The alien formation continued advancing, their plasma weapons charging for another volley. General Vakhtar was confident that the next barrage would eliminate the human resistance entirely. His tactical display showed energy signatures consistent with primitive chemical-powered vehicles. One direct hit from a plasma cannon would be more than sufficient to destroy any of them. "Fire," Rodriguez commanded. The M1's main gun erupted with a thunderous roar that echoed across the desert. The depleted uranium penetrator, accelerated by chemical explosives to over a mile per second, streaked across the battlefield faster than the eye could follow. The alien commander had exactly 1.2 seconds to register confusion, as his sensors detected an incoming projectile. His advanced energy shields were designed to deflect plasma, particle beams, and energy weapons. They were not designed to stop a dense metal spike traveling at hypersonic velocity. The sabot round punched through the alien hover tank's shields as if they didn't exist. It penetrated the advanced armor plating, passed through the vehicle's core systems, and exited through the rear hull in a shower of sparks and alien fluids. The hover tank dropped to the ground like a stone, its anti-gravity systems failing catastrophically. "Target destroyed," Kim reported, his voice filled with amazement. Across the battlefield, 46 other M1 Abrams fired simultaneously. The desert erupted in a symphony of thunder as 46 sabot rounds shrieked through the air. The aliens had barely registered the destruction of their lead vehicle when the rest of their formation began exploding around them. General Vakhtar's tactical display lit up with damage reports and system failures. In less than 3 seconds, 28 of his hover tanks had been completely destroyed. The remainder were reporting shield failures and critical damage to their propulsion systems. "Impossible," he transmitted to his remaining units. "How are their primitive kinetic weapons penetrating our defenses?" The answer was simple physics that the aliens had overlooked in their technological arrogance. Their energy shields could deflect other energy weapons, but they offered no protection against solid matter traveling at extreme velocity. The humans weren't trying to out-technology their opponents. They were using the oldest weapon in the universe, throwing rocks. Just very fast, very dense rocks. "All units, reload and engage targets of opportunity," Rodriguez commanded. Her crew worked with practiced efficiency, sliding another sabot round into the gun's chamber. The surviving alien vehicles tried to return fire, but their targeting systems were calibrated for energy weapons and struggling to track the supersonic projectiles. Their plasma beams continued to miss the hull-down tanks, striking empty ground or passing harmlessly overhead. "These humans fight like cowards," General Vakhtar snarled into his communicator, hiding behind terrain, refusing honorable combat. What he didn't understand was that the humans weren't being cowardly, they were being smart. Centuries of warfare had taught them that survival was more important than honor, and effectiveness was more valuable than flashy displays of technology. The second volley from the M1 Abrams finished the job. The remaining alien hover tanks exploded in showers of exotic matter and energy discharge. In less than 90 seconds, an entire alien armored formation had been completely annihilated by what they had dismissed as primitive museum pieces. Rodriguez watched the last alien vehicle crash to the ground, its anti-gravity system sparking and failing. Around her, the radio channels filled with excited chatter from other tank crews reporting similar successes across the battlefield. Bulldog 6 to command, she transmitted. Sector clear. Enemy armor destroyed. No friendly casualties. Confirmed, Bulldog 6, came the reply. Outstanding work. As Rodriguez surveyed the battlefield through her periscope, she allowed herself a small smile. The aliens had made a crucial mistake. They had assumed that newer automatically meant better. Sometimes older technology that had been refined through centuries of warfare was exactly what the situation required. Admiral Zexathara stared at the tactical display in his command ship, his forearms trembling with rage and disbelief. The holographic battlefield showed the smoking remains of General Vakhtar's entire armored division, scattered across the human desert like broken toys. Not a single alien vehicle had survived the engagement. How is this possible? He demanded, his scaled hide changing color from its usual blue-green to an angry red. Our shields, our armor, our technological superiority, all defeated by primitive chemical weapons. Commander Thiss hunched over his analysis station, his pale features drawn with concentration. Admiral, I've reviewed the battle recording 17 times. The human projectiles are traveling at velocities we didn't account for. Our energy shields were designed to deflect plasma and particle weapons, not solid matter at hypersonic speeds. You're telling me that our most advanced defensive systems can't stop a lump of metal? Admiral Zexathara's voice rose to a pitch that made several bridge crew members flinch. Not just any metal. Sir? Ambassador Sylvan interjected, her crystalline form pulsing with urgent amber light. Analysis shows they're using depleted uranium penetrators. Dense, self-sharpening, and traveling at over 1,500 meters per second. At those velocities, they carry more kinetic energy than most of our plasma bolts. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. The Galactic Council's most advanced military technology had been neutralized by what amounted to sophisticated bullets. It was humiliating beyond measure. Sir, called out the communications officer, we're receiving reports from invasion fleets across the planet, similar engagements in Europe, Asia, and Australia. The results are consistent. Admiral Zexathara's claws scraped against his command throne. Show me. The main display shifted to show battlefields around the globe. In the German countryside, Leopard 2 tanks were systematically destroying alien hover vehicles from concealed positions. British Challenger 2s were picking off enemy units from impossible ranges, their rifled guns proving devastatingly accurate. Russian T-90s emerged from hidden bunkers to ambush alien columns before disappearing back underground. They're all using the same tactics, observed Commander Thiss. Hull-down positions, ambush warfare, concentrated fire on single targets. It's like they've been preparing for this specific type of engagement. What the aliens didn't understand was that humans had been preparing for exactly this type of engagement, just not against aliens. The tactics they were witnessing had been developed through decades of studying how to defeat technologically superior opponents. Every human tank crew had trained extensively in fighting enemies with air superiority, advanced sensors, and overwhelming firepower. Admiral, the sensor officer reported, human reinforcements are moving into position across all theaters. Our intelligence suggests they have thousands of these tank units. Thousands? Admiral Zexathara's voice cracked. Of these primitive but apparently effective weapons? The reality was even worse than the aliens suspected. Earth's major powers had spent the 3 months since first contact mass-producing ammunition, specifically designed for alien technology. Warehouses full of depleted uranium penetrators, tungsten sabots, and high-explosive anti-tank rounds had been distributed to every armored unit on the planet. Meanwhile, in a bunker beneath Colorado's Cheyenne Mountain, General Patricia Hayes studied the same tactical displays from the human perspective. The results were better than anyone had dared hope. How are our losses? She asked her intelligence officer. Minimal, ma'am. We've lost fewer than 20 tanks across all theaters, mostly to indirect fire when units broke cover too early. The aliens seem completely unprepared for kinetic weapons. General Hayes nodded grimly. Their technology is impressive, but they've made the classic mistake of over-engineering solutions to problems that don't exist. They've never faced an enemy that uses brute force physics. On the alien command ship, Admiral Zexathara was coming to similar conclusions, though far less comfortably. Analysis of human weapons, he demanded. The ship's artificial intelligence, a crystalline construct that interfaced directly with the vessel's computers, materialized as a shimmering hologram. Human tank weapons operate on chemical propulsion principles that have remained essentially unchanged for 2 centuries. They accelerate dense projectiles using controlled explosions, primitive but effective within their operational parameters. And our countermeasures? Limited, Admiral. Our shields cannot deflect solid matter at those velocities. Our armor was designed to resist energy weapons and is insufficient against kinetic penetrators. Recommendations include maintaining greater engagement distances and avoiding direct confrontation. Admiral Zexathara's rage was now mixed with something approaching panic. The Galactic Council had committed to this invasion based on overwhelming technological superiority. Now they were being advised to avoid direct confrontation with the supposedly primitive enemy. "What about our orbital bombardment capabilities?" he asked desperately. "Operational, Admiral, but human forces are dispersed and using extensive camouflage. Orbital strikes would be inefficient against mobile targets using guerrilla tactics." The truth was that human military doctrine had evolved specifically to counter orbital supremacy. Tank units operated from hardened bunkers, moved through underground tunnels, and used decoys and electronic warfare to confuse enemy sensors. Every lesson learned from fighting technologically superior opponents was being applied. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission from the human military command." "Put it through," Admiral Zexathara ordered. Curious to hear what the primitives had to say, General Hayes's face appeared on the main screen, her expression calm and professional. "This is General Patricia Hayes, United Earth Defense Force, to the commander of the alien invasion fleet. I am Admiral Zexathara," he replied, trying to project authority despite his recent defeats. "What do you want, human?" "I want to give you some free advice, Admiral," General Hayes said with a slight smile. "You might want to reconsider your current strategy. Your hover tanks are impressive, but they're not designed to fight main battle tanks. You're bringing energy weapons to a kinetic fight." The human general's casual confidence infuriated the Admiral. "Your primitive weapons cannot stand against the might of the Galactic Council." "With respect, Admiral, your people have been saying that for 3 months now. Meanwhile, you've lost over 300 armored vehicles in the last 6 hours. At this rate, you'll run out of tanks before we run out of ammunition." Admiral Zexathara cut the transmission, his rage boiling over, but deep down, he was beginning to understand an uncomfortable truth. The humans weren't primitive. They were specialized. While the Galactic Council had developed elegant, complex solutions to warfare, humans had spent centuries perfecting the art of making things explode and fall down. "Admiral," Commander Theis said quietly, "perhaps we should consider alternative strategies. The humans clearly have advantages in ground combat that we didn't anticipate." "No," Admiral Zexathara snarled. "We adapt, we learn, we overcome, prepare the heavy assault units and the siege platforms. If brute force is what the humans understand, then brute force is what they'll get." The alien commander was about to learn another hard lesson about human warfare. When humans found something that worked, they built bigger, better, and more devastating versions of it. The ground trembled beneath Staff Sergeant Rodriguez's M1 Abrams as massive alien siege platforms descended from the cloudy sky. These weren't the sleek hover tanks from the previous battle. These were enormous, heavily armored monstrosities the size of office buildings, bristling with weapons and surrounded by crackling energy fields. "Holy hell," breathed Private Jackson, staring through his gun sight at the approaching Titans. "Those things are huge." Rodriguez counted 12 of the massive platforms settling onto the desert floor with earth-shaking impacts. Each one stood nearly 50 meters tall, supported by thick mechanical legs that carved deep furrows in the hardpan. Their hulls were covered in overlapping armor plates that seemed to shift and flow like living metal. "Command, this is Bulldog 6, Rodriguez transmitted, trying to keep the awe out of her voice. "We've got contact with oversized enemy units. These aren't like the hover tanks. Requesting immediate fire support." "Negative, Bulldog 6, came the reply. "All artillery is engaged with similar targets across the front. You're on your own for now." Admiral Zexathara watched the deployment from his command ship with satisfaction. These siege platforms represented the pinnacle of Galactic Council military engineering. Each one carried enough firepower to level a human city in armor thick enough to withstand orbital bombardment. Begin primary bombardment, he ordered. Show these humans what real firepower looks like. The siege platform's main weapons began charging, energy coursing through massive barrel arrays that could have housed entire families. The air itself seemed to ionize around the weapons as they prepared to unleash devastation on a scale the humans had never experienced. All Bulldog units, disperse and take evasive action, Rodriguez commanded. The M1 Abrams scattered from their positions, their tracks churning dust as they sought whatever cover they could find in the barren landscape. The alien weapons fired simultaneously, sending 12 columns of superheated plasma screaming earthward. The beams struck with the force of tactical nuclear weapons, vaporizing everything within a 100-meter radius of each impact point. Where the human tanks had been positioned moments before, only glass craters remained. Direct hits on multiple targets, reported the alien gunnery officer. Sensor readings indicate complete destruction of enemy units, but Admiral Zexthera's satisfaction was short-lived. As the plasma dissipated and the dust cleared, thermal sensors detected movement. The human tanks had survived by abandoning their positions before the weapons could lock on. Now they were spreading out, using speed and terrain to avoid the massive guns' tracking systems. Impossible, muttered General Vokhtar, who had been given command of the siege platforms after his previous failures. How did they know to move? The answer was centuries of hard-won battlefield experience. Human tank crews had learned to recognize the telltale signs of incoming artillery. The change in air pressure, the electromagnetic signatures, the subtle vibrations that preceded massive weapons fire. When you couldn't match your enemy's firepower, you learned not to be where their guns were pointing. Rodriguez's tank crested a small hill and immediately dropped into a hull-down position. Through her periscope, she could see one of the siege platforms rotating its massive turret searching for targets. The alien war machine was impressive, but it was also slow and cumbersome. "Kim, can you get a range to that thing?" she asked. "Working on it," Kim replied, adjusting his targeting systems. "These energy signatures are playing hell with our equipment, but—" "Got it. Range 2,800 meters. Jackson, what's our ammunition status?" 12 rounds of Sabot 6 heat 4 white phosphorus, Jackson reported. Rodriguez did quick mental calculations. The siege platform's armor looked incredibly thick, but armor had weak points. Every vehicle did, no matter how advanced. "Load Sabot," she ordered. "Sabot up," Jackson confirmed. The M1's main gun traversed, the targeting computer calculating wind, range, and the platform's slow movement. Rodriguez took a deep breath and squeezed the firing trigger. The depleted uranium penetrator screamed across the battlefield and struck the siege platform squarely on its lower hull. Instead of the satisfying explosion Rodriguez had hoped for, the round sparked off the alien armor and ricocheted into the sky. "No penetration," Kim reported glumly. "Son of a bitch," Rodriguez muttered. The alien armor was too thick for conventional Sabot rounds. But across the battlefield, other human tank commanders were reaching the same conclusion and adapting accordingly. Captain Sarah Chen, commanding a platoon of upgraded M1A2s, had a different idea. "All steel units, this is Steel 6, she transmitted to her tanks. "These things are too heavily armored for frontal attacks. We need to get behind them or find weak points. Chen out." The captain's tank emerged from concealment and began a high-speed flanking maneuver, using a dry creek bed for cover. Her move didn't go unnoticed by the aliens. "Enemy unit attempting flanking maneuver," reported the siege platform sensor operator. "Shall I engage?" "Affirmative," replied the platform commander. "All secondary weapons concentrate fire on the mobile target." The siege platform's hull erupted with smaller weapon ports, each one firing streams of plasma at the racing M1 Abrams. The beams carved smoking trenches in the earth around Chen's tank as her driver, Sergeant Williams, threw the 60-ton vehicle through evasive maneuvers that would have been impressive in a sports car. "Jesus, Sarge, they're getting close," called out Chen's gunner as a plasma bolt passed mere meters from their turret. "Keep us moving, Williams," Chen replied calmly. "We just need to get around to their 6. The alien siege platform tried to rotate to keep the human tank in its forward firing arc, but the massive war machine's bulk worked against it. The mechanical legs that supported it could only move so fast, and the heavy turret couldn't traverse quickly enough to track a target moving at the M1's top speed. Chen's tank disappeared behind the siege platform, and the alien weapons fell silent, unable to depress low enough to hit a target directly beneath them. Now we've got you, Chen murmured, studying the platform's rear aspect through her commander's sight. The back of the alien war machine was less heavily armored, with visible heat exchangers and what looked like engine compartments. Gunner heat round, target the exhaust manifolds. Heat up, her gunner confirmed, loading the shaped charge warhead designed to defeat heavy armor. The round struck the siege platform's rear hull and detonated, sending a jet of superheated metal deep into the alien machine's propulsion systems. Alarms began wailing inside the platform as critical systems failed. "We have multiple system failures," the platform's damage control officer reported. "Propulsion down 60%, power systems compromised." But Chen wasn't finished. "Load another heat round," she ordered. "Target those sensor arrays on top." The second round struck the platform's sensor cluster, blinding the massive war machine and leaving it unable to effectively target human units. One by one, other M1 crews began copying Chen's tactics, using their superior mobility to get behind the cumbersome siege platforms where their thinner, rear armor was vulnerable to shaped charge warheads. Admiral Zexathera watched his tactical display with growing horror as his siege platforms reported system failures and damage. The humans weren't trying to match his firepower head-to-head. Instead, they were using speed, tactics, and knowledge of armored warfare to systematically disable his most powerful weapons. "How are they doing this?" he demanded. The answer was simple but effective. The humans were fighting smart instead of fighting fair. Every M1 Abrams crew had trained extensively in fighting larger, more powerful opponents. They knew that mobility was life, that armor had weak points, and that the best defense against a bigger gun was not being where it was pointing when it fired. As the battle continued, more siege platforms fell victim to rear attacks, mobility kills, and precision strikes on critical systems. The aliens' most advanced weapons were being systematically neutralized by opponents they had dismissed as primitive. "Sir," the communications officer reported, "General Vakhtar is requesting immediate evacuation from his command platform. The humans have disabled his primary weapons and are closing for the kill." Admiral Zexathera stared at the display, watching his supposedly invincible siege platforms being picked apart by human tanks that cost a fraction of what his war machines did. For the first time since the invasion began, he was starting to understand that technological superiority meant nothing if you didn't know how to use it properly. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council's War Committee convened aboard Admiral Zexathera's flagship, but the atmosphere was far from the confident arrogance that had marked their previous gatherings. Holographic representatives flickered around the conference table, their various forms displaying universal signs of stress and confusion. "Explain to me how a primitive species with chemical-powered vehicles has destroyed 70% of our ground forces," demanded Supreme Commander Kethmore, his crystalline exoskeleton pulsing with angry red energy. The leader of the Galactic Council's military forces had not expected to be personally involved in what should have been a routine planetary conquest. Admiral Zexathera's scales had turned a sickly yellow-green, indicating both fear and shame among his species. "Supreme Commander, we underestimated their tactical capabilities. These humans don't fight like any species we've encountered before. They fight like barbarians," spat General Vakhtar, his insectoid form twitching with agitation. "No honor, no adherence to accepted combat protocols. They use terrain, concealment, and hit-and-run tactics instead of meeting us in honest battle." Ambassador Sylvan's crystalline form had dimmed to a barely visible glow, the equivalent of whispering among her people. "Perhaps that's precisely why they're winning. We've become so accustomed to energy shield warfare and hover combat that we forgot about the fundamental principles of armored warfare." Commander Theiss manipulated his personal holographic display, showing battle footage from across Earth's surface. "Observe their coordination, Supreme Commander. When one of their tank units engages our forces, others immediately move to flanking positions. They communicate constantly, share targeting information, and coordinate their attacks with precision." The footage showed a battle in the European theater, where a company of German Leopard 2 tanks had engaged a full alien armored division. The human tanks appeared from multiple directions simultaneously, fired in coordinated volleys, then disappeared into prepared defensive positions before the aliens could return effective fire. "They're using the terrain itself as a weapon," noted Intelligence Officer Zarthis, her tentacled form coiled in what indicated deep thought. Every engagement takes place on ground they've prepared in advance. Hidden positions, pre-planned escape routes, overlapping fields of fire. Supreme Commander Kethmore's exoskeleton shifted to a deep blue, indicating intense concentration. What do our tactical computers recommend? Orbital bombardment of all population centers, Admiral Zexathera replied quickly. If we eliminate their industrial capacity and command structures, their resistance will collapse. Unacceptable. Supreme Commander Kethmore's form flared with decisive energy. The Council requires this planet's resources intact. Orbital bombardment would render most of the surface uninhabitable for decades. Commander Thys leaned forward, his pale features grave. Supreme Commander, there's something else. Our intelligence suggests the humans have been mass-producing ammunition specifically designed to counter our technology. They've had 3 months to study our forces and adapt. The holographic display shifted to show human manufacturing facilities working at maximum capacity. Factories that had previously produced civilian goods were now churning out tank rounds, spare parts, and electronic warfare equipment. The scale of production was staggering. How many of these tank units do they possess? Supreme Commander Kethmore asked. Conservative estimates suggest 15,000 main battle tanks globally, Intelligence Officer Zarthis reported. Additionally, they have support vehicles, self-propelled artillery, and what they call tank destroyers, lighter vehicles specifically designed to hunt armor. The number hit the alien commanders like a physical blow. They had brought approximately 500 armored vehicles to what they thought would be an easy conquest. The humans outnumbered them 30-1. There's more, Zarthis continued reluctantly. Human industrial capacity is still increasing. They're producing new tanks at a rate of approximately 50 units per day across their various manufacturing centers. Ambassador Sylvan's form brightened slightly, indicating a realization. They're not just fighting us, they're outproducing us. While we've been trying to deploy our existing forces more effectively, they've been building an entirely new army. Meanwhile, on Earth's surface, the humans were indeed building that new army. In Detroit, workers who had spent their careers making civilian automobiles were now welding armor onto M1 chassis. In Germany, Rheinmetall factories ran 24-hour shifts producing 120mm tank rounds. Across Russia, T-90 production lines that had been mothballed for years roared back to life. But it wasn't just about numbers. Human engineers had been studying every piece of alien technology they could recover from the battlefields. In underground facilities, teams of scientists worked to understand alien energy shields, armor composition, and weapon systems. Dr. Elizabeth Warren, a materials scientist at MIT, had made a breakthrough that would change everything. General Hayes, she reported via secure video link. We figured out how their energy shields work. They're designed to deflect coherent energy by creating interference patterns. But they have a fatal flaw, sir. What kind of flaw? General Hayes asked from her command bunker. They're frequency specific. The shields are tuned to block their own weapons and similar energy signatures. But if we can modulate our ammunition to emit the right electromagnetic frequency as it penetrates, General Hayes leaned forward. You're saying we can make their shields work against them? Exactly. I've developed a coating for our penetrator rounds that will cause the shields to actually pull the projectiles through rather than deflect them. The aliens' own technology will help our ammunition punch through their armor. Back on the alien flagship, Supreme Commander Kethmore was receiving similarly disturbing intelligence reports. The humans have recovered our technology from destroyed vehicles and are reverse engineering our systems, reported Intelligence Officer Zarthis. How is that possible? General Vakhtar demanded. Our technology is centuries ahead of theirs. That may be the problem, Commander Thys observed quietly. Our technology is so advanced that we've forgotten the basic principles it's built on. The humans are engineers and mechanics. They understand how things work from the ground up. The truth was even more uncomfortable than the aliens realized. Human engineers weren't trying to replicate alien technology. They were finding ways to defeat it using principles the aliens had forgotten. While the Galactic Council had focused on elegant, complex solutions, humans had spent centuries perfecting the art of breaking things efficiently. Sir, the communications officer interrupted. We're receiving another transmission from the Human Military Command. General Hayes appeared on the main screen again, but this time she wasn't alone. Behind her stood representatives from every major Earth military, American, Russian, Chinese, European, and others. The message was clear. Humanity was united in its resistance. Supreme Commander Kethmore, General Hayes began, apparently having learned the alien leader's identity through intelligence gathering. I believe it's time we discuss terms. Terms? Supreme Commander Kethmore's exoskeleton flared with indignation. You are in no position to dictate terms, human. With respect, sir, I believe we are, General Hayes replied calmly. You've lost over 2/3 of your ground forces. Your remaining units are trapped in defensive positions across 17 countries, and we're still building more tanks. She gestured to a display behind her showing global production figures. As of this morning, we've completed our 2,000th new main battle tank since the invasion began. Our ammunition production has increased by 400%, and we've just finished testing some new equipment specifically designed to counter your energy shields. Supreme Commander Kethmore's form dimmed as he processed this information. The humans weren't just winning the current battles. They were winning the war of production and innovation. Every day the conflict continued, they grew stronger while his forces grew weaker. What are you proposing? He asked reluctantly. Withdrawal, General Hayes said simply. You leave our space, we let you leave alive. Continue this war, and we'll destroy every ship in your fleet using the same tactics that eliminated your ground forces. The alien commander looked around the conference table at his subordinates. Their various forms all displayed the same emotion, defeat. They had come to conquer a primitive world and instead found themselves outfought, outproduced, and outthought by an enemy they had dismissed as irrelevant. The Council will never accept such terms, Supreme Commander Kethmore said, but his voice lacked conviction. Then the Council will learn the same lesson your ground forces did, General Hayes replied. Superior technology means nothing if you don't know how to use it properly. And humans, Supreme Commander, have been learning how to break things for a very long time. 6 months after the last alien vessel disappeared from Earth's skies, Staff Sergeant Maria Rodriguez stood in a place she never imagined she'd see, the bridge of a captured Galactic Council cruiser. The massive warship hung in orbit around Earth, now serving as humanity's first interstellar research facility. Hard to believe these things used to scare us, said Private Jackson, running his hand along a control panel that still glowed with alien symbols. Her former gunner had been promoted and now served as part of the international team, studying captured alien technology. Rodriguez nodded, watching through the viewport as human spacecraft moved between the dozen alien vessels that had surrendered, rather than face destruction. The final battle hadn't taken place on Earth's surface at all. When Supreme Commander Kethmore refused the initial withdrawal terms, General Hayes had demonstrated humanity's new capabilities in the most dramatic way possible. The breakthrough had come from Dr. Warren's electromagnetic frequency research, but the application had been pure human ingenuity. Instead of just improving tank ammunition, human engineers had scaled up the principle. Massive railgun installations, hastily constructed using alien manufacturing technology, had begun launching projectiles directly into orbit. You should have seen Kethmore's face when our first railgun shot punched through his flagship's shields, Rodriguez remembered aloud. The Supreme Commander's crystalline exoskeleton had actually cracked from shock when a simple tungsten rod, accelerated to 20% of light speed, had carved through his supposedly impenetrable energy barriers. The final engagement had lasted less than an hour. Human railguns fired from concealed positions across Earth's surface, while captured alien manufacturing systems produced ammunition faster than the orbital fleet could track incoming projectiles. The Galactic Council's most advanced warships had been systematically disabled by weapons that operated on principles they had forgotten centuries ago. Ma'am, called out Dr. Sarah Chen, the former tank commander who now headed the Alien Technology Integration Program. You need to see this latest intelligence report. Rodriguez walked over to the holographic display that Chen had activated. It showed a map of local galactic space with various alien territories marked in different colors. Red zones indicated Galactic Council space, while newer blue areas showed something unexpected. What am I looking at? Rodriguez asked. Reports from other species in the local cluster, Chen explained. Word has gotten out about what happened here, about how humans defeated Galactic Council forces using kinetic weapons and tactical superiority. The implications were staggering. Across dozens of star systems, other species that had been subjugated or threatened by the Galactic Council were beginning their own rebellions. Many were requesting human military advisors and copies of human weapon designs. The Zilani Confederacy wants to license our tank designs, Chen continued. The Thorian Republic is asking for training in human combined arms tactics. And get this, the Crystalline Collective wants to hire human mercenaries to protect their trade routes. Rodriguez laughed, remembering Admiral Zexathera's dismissive comments about primitive human technology. 6 months ago, they thought our tanks were museum pieces. Now they want to build copies. Dr. Elizabeth Warren's voice came through the communication system from her laboratory deeper in the ship. Maria, you need to see what we've discovered about Galactic Council military doctrine. It explains everything. Rodriguez made her way through corridors that had been designed for beings much taller than humans, past observation windows showing the blue marble of Earth below. The research laboratory was a fascinating blend of human equipment and alien technology, where scientists from every Earth nation worked together to understand their former enemies' capabilities. Look at this, Dr. Warren said, gesturing to a holographic display showing Galactic Council military history. For over 2,000 years, they've been fighting the same way. Energy weapons against energy shields, hover vehicles in open terrain, direct confrontation between technological equals. They got comfortable, Rodriguez observed. Exactly. They developed tactics to fight other advanced civilizations that thought the same way they did. Energy weapons, force shields, anti-gravity propulsion, elegant solutions to warfare between technological peers. The display shifted to show human military history, with its endless cycle of action and reaction, innovation and counter-innovation, wars between equals that forced constant adaptation and improvement. But humans never got comfortable, Dr. Warren continued. We kept fighting each other with whatever worked. Sometimes that was advanced technology. Sometimes it was simple brutality. We learned to adapt to any opponent, any technology, any tactical situation. Rodriguez studied the tactical analyses showing how human forces had systematically exploited every weakness in alien combat doctrine. The Galactic Council had optimized their military for fighting other Galactic Council members. Humans had optimized their military for fighting anybody. There's something else, Dr. Warren added, pulling up manufacturing data. The aliens are incredibly advanced, but they're not efficient. Look at this production comparison. The hologram showed the resource costs for various military vehicles. A single alien hover tank required exotic materials worth more than a human city. An M1 Abrams tank, by contrast, could be built using materials available from any industrial planet. They can build better individual units, Rodriguez realized. But we can build more units faster and cheaper. Quality versus quantity, Dr. Warren agreed. And in war, quantity has a quality all its own. The research was interrupted by an incoming transmission from Earth's surface. General Hayes appeared on the communication screen, her expression serious but satisfied. Rodriguez, Chen, Warren, you need to see this. We just received a formal communication from the Galactic Council's governing body. The display shifted to show an ornate alien chamber, where dozens of different species sat in judgment. The being addressing the camera was unlike any the humans had encountered before. A massive, ancient creature that seemed to be made of living metal. People of Earth, the being intoned in heavily accented English. I am High Counselor Vexthren, Speaker for the Galactic Council. We formally acknowledge your species' right to self-determination and sovereignty over your home system. Rodriguez felt a surge of satisfaction. Official recognition from the galaxy's dominant political power. Furthermore, the High Counselor continued, the Council formally requests to open diplomatic relations with humanity. We believe our civilizations have much to learn from each other. Translation, Chen muttered. They want to hire us to fight their wars. The High Counselor's next words confirmed her suspicion. The Council faces threats from several aggressive species in the outer spiral arms. Your military capabilities and tactical innovations could prove valuable in maintaining galactic stability. General Hayes cut the transmission and looked directly at Rodriguez through the camera. Sergeant, you and your people have given humanity something we never had before, respect among the stars. The question now is what we do with it. Rodriguez looked out the viewport at Earth below, where the blue oceans and white clouds showed no signs of the massive changes taking place on its surface. Human industry was already expanding beyond Earth using captured alien technology. Human military advisors were training alien allies in the tactics that had defeated the Galactic Council. Human weapons were being mass-produced for export to species that had never heard of kinetic energy weapons. "We do what we've always done, General," Rodriguez replied. "We adapt, we overcome, and we make sure nobody ever underestimates human engineering again." In the distance, she could see construction beginning on humanity's first interstellar shipyard. The designs were based on alien technology, but the weapons they would carry would be purely human: railguns, missile systems, and kinetic energy weapons that could punch through any shield ever devised. The galaxy had laughed at Earth's outdated tanks and primitive chemical weapons. Now they wanted to hire the species that had used those primitive weapons to defeat the most advanced military force in known space. Humanity had gone from a backwater planet to a galactic military power in less than a year, simply by being very good at the one thing they had always excelled at: breaking other people's toys in the most efficient way possible. The universe, it turned out, had a lot of toys that needed breaking,